Good evening, everybody. My name is E.R. Anderson. I'm the executive director of Charis Circle. Charis Circle is the nonprofit programming arm of Charis Books, and Charis Books is the South's oldest independent feminist bookstore. We are delighted to be here tonight with Tamara Winfrey Harris and Hannah Eko to celebrate Dear Black Girl, Letters from Your Sisters on Stepping into Your Power. We first came to know Tamara with her first book, The Sisters Are All Right, Changing the Broken Narrative of Black Women in America, which we were so fortunate to get to do as a live event in person. And we had hoped when we very first heard about this book that we would actually all be together physically at Charis. So I am sad that we're not sitting together in the same room, but we encourage everybody who's watching at home to, treat it like your living room. So let me go ahead and introduce our interviewer first. Hannah Eko is a Black Nigerian writer, teaching artist, and creator of Honey Knife LLC. Born in London, she grew up in Southern California, has lived on both sides of the ocean and some rivers in between. Her work has been featured in BuzzFeed, Bust, Bitch, Makeshift, and Asterisk magazine. She is a 2019 recipient of the Advancing Black Arts Grant, a Peter R. Taylor Kenyon Fellow, Tin House Scholar, and VONA Voices of Our Nations alum. She believes honey is the knife. So welcome, Hannah. And we are here tonight to celebrate Tamara Winfrey Harris, whose writing on race and gender has appeared in the New York Times, The Atlantic, New York Magazine, Los Angeles Times, Bitch, and other media. And as I said before, she is the author of the award-winning book, The Sisters Are All Right, Changing the Broken Narrative of Black Women in America, and the book we are here to celebrate tonight, Dear Black Girl, Letters from Your Sisters on Stepping into Your Power. So welcome to you. We are so happy for you. The last thing I want to say is folks can ask a question at any time. It is not disruptive to put a question at any time by clicking this Ask a Question box in the bottom center of your screen. So go ahead and put lots of questions in there, and Hannah will incorporate them throughout the conversation tonight. So thank you both so much for being here. Thanks to everyone who's watching from home. We know this is going to be a great evening.
Thank you. And everybody who is listening and watching, like when they let us out of the house, please go visit Charis because I love that place. I'm so upset I can't be there in person, but they are fantastic. So please visit and patronize them when you have the time. Hey, Hannah.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. Yeah.
I thought, so Hannah and I talked before we did this, and I thought that I might start with the preface to the book because I think it will give you a good idea of what I intended, when I decided to create Dear Black Girl. So the preface is called We Are All Right. My Black girls, you tell me things. You tell me how you love your mamas, but kind of hate them too. You tell me about the fuck boys at school who text dirty messages. You tell me about beauty insecurities, 2 big noses and 5 heads. You tell me who you like, showing me pictures of boys on IG and giggling. Ain't he cute? You tell me these things and I smile. It's been a while since I was a girl, but I remember hating my parents' rules and being insecure about my looks. I remember the trifling boys and superfine crushes. Some things about Black girlhood never change. You tell me other things too. You tell me about anxiety or depression that will not let go. You tell me about social media memes that leave you feeling demeaned and hated. You tell me about boys and men who violate you and families who cannot deal with the devastation of sexual assault. You tell me about carrying the burden of friends and family who have been murdered. You tell me about families who cannot accept your queer identity. You tell me about schools that suspend you for petty reasons. You tell me how people assume you are angry, unfeminine, grown, and hypersexual before you can even find out who you are for yourself. You tell me these things and I worry. I remember that the world does not value Black girls like it should. Some things that are too common in Black girlhood must change.
Thank you for that. And so again, my name is Hannah Eko, and I'm so happy to be here and be in conversation with Tamara. And it was such a beautiful surprise to be a part of this collection. So I'm going to start out just like reading my piece, and then we can go into the conversation and just talk about this very, very beautiful book.
And I just have to say thank you, Hannah, for contributing this. It was actually, when you hear it, guys, it's absolutely amazing. And the minute I read it, I was like, this has to be in the book.
Thank you so much. So here it goes. And my letter is called, Dear Little Black Girls I Once Saw in a South Dakota Waterhole. We were the only Black people at Evans Plunge Mineral Springs. You were two pretty dark-skinned girls splashing around the coldish water. You were tucked within a large white family, and I was with my white boyfriend, driving cross-country between Portland and New York. After an hour or so, our trio were the only ones standing within the echoing shower of the ladies' locker room. The droplets hit the ground like random applause, and you gazed at me with wide, cavernous eyes, neon bathing suits stark against the darkness of the room. I smiled because I did not know what to say. Almost 8 years later, and my mind still flutters towards you. You are close to 12 now. Dear not so little Black girls I once saw in the South Dakota watering hole. We are a different 12. There are online forums for transracial adoptees. 4 Black women were crowned the most beautiful in their universes just last year. There is a Black Little Mermaid. Maybe your parents learned to Bantuna via YouTube tutorial. Maybe they know color blindness is not an attribute. Maybe they take focused care to gently lead you through this thing called life, being proud of being a Black girl. We are the same 12. A 12 teeming with questions unasked because life is odd and dynamic. Like, why are white girls driven to make your life a passive-aggressive hell? Why were you given up anyways? Why do some Black girls make fun of the way you talk? How can you be proud of yourself and admit that sometimes everything is confusing? I was once a Black girl fostered by white people, a young Black woman in schools that were mostly white. When I brought up instances of racism or sexism, I was told I was too sensitive, crazy, and or my favorite, a class A racist myself. Sometimes the worst hurt were the ones I received from those who look like me. I learned to bottle the storm, lock it in within my shoulders and stomach, pretend. Still, I am here, loving this self, liking her more days than not. Dear not so little Black girls I once saw in a South Dakota watering hole. There is a concept in yoga called ahimsa, which is respect towards all living things and a practice of non-harm. Most people actually usually think this topic as it relates to other human beings and animals. But when it comes to Black girls adopted or living in white spaces, the work of ahimsa is just as powerful when applied to the self. We who too often learn to harm ourselves in ways the world still will not recognize or care about. We who learn to suffer silently because there are bigger concerns. I smiled at you that day, my mouth wordless. What I had wanted to say was, please do not hurt yourself. Adore your skin, hair, your mouth, your heart, and your mind. Never try controlling another human being. Accept the history of who you are and how you came to be. Practice love and respect. The white girls who perform quiet meanness and the Black girls who tease you are dealing with a pain that is not yours to carry. Do not try. Dear not so little Black girls I once saw in a South Dakota watering hole. You will mess up. I chose white dolls over Black ones, lived in an era where I thought white things were smarter, deeper, better. I quieted the essence of who I truly was around Black people, belittled my experience for the differences it held. Hamisa is a practice, a chain, a string of beads linking to infinity. And life is life. In that shower 8 years ago, you stared like I was the first Black person you had witnessed in a long time. We regarded each other in the rush of water and steam, our flip-flops squishing bubbles. If your eyes were silent x-rays, at the center of my chest would have been a prayer for you that had yet to be made into words. Dear not so little Black girls, I once saw in a South Dakota watering hole. May you love yourself exactly as you are and have the courage to always try. Love, Hatta.
I love that. I absolutely love that.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
You're so welcome. And it was such a healing for me to write these letters and to read it, even just like reading it right now. It's like, yes, like that's one of the most beautiful things about this book is how it is both, it goes back and forth in time. And so I want to talk to you about that, about what triggered you to kind of go backwards in some ways. And what were you responding to around you?
So, you know, it was really two things. Like if I go back to when I was touring for Sisters Are All Right, I noticed this thing where, you know, I would talk to groups of Black women and, you know, my first book was about stereotypes of Black women, and they would reject the stereotypes as they related to them. So, you know, they rejected the idea of the Jezebel or the Mammy or the Sapphire. But somehow when conversation turned to younger women and girls, you heard some of that language cropping up, especially as it related to sexuality. I remember specifically there was one older woman who said, I don't know, these young women, they're awfully free with their bodies. I guess that's some kind of liberation. And you just wondered if we are each other's strongest allies, and if that's what you're hearing from the women who are you, who look like you, like how does that feel? And so I was holding that was in my head many years later when I was doing a workshop with two friends, and it was an intergenerational workshop for Black women and girls. And I just had the idea that the girls that were participating should maybe leave with letters. There were 12 of them. So I just went on Facebook and said, hey, can anybody, I need 12 letters. And man, did Black women show up. I got more than 50 letters, one from as far as Switzerland. One Black woman sent like a stack of journals. Like, you know, people use pretty stationery, scented stationery. They put sparklies in the envelope. Like it was beautiful and very loving, and very caring and nurturing. And I read the first letter and immediately ugly cried. And I realized that, you know, this was going to have to be more than just a moment. It was going to have to be a movement. And the easiest way to get, you know, lots of these stories in girls' hands was to do it as a book.
Wow, that's really, and that kind of goes into like my next question, which is, so you talked about, you know, how it came from this like particular activity and how there's such a response and love to these. And so I want to talk about just like, what do you think is the power of letter writing versus like if it came into another form?
Yeah, so, and I'd love to know how you felt writing the letter. Like, I think especially now, there's something that feels especially caring and loving about getting a letter, because nobody does it anymore. Like, I can't think of the last time I got a letter. I can't even remember it. Our communication is a lot less thoughtful. It's, you know, it's text, it's shorthand, it's emoji, it's, you know, all of those things. And I brought a stack of letters to a bunch of girls in this local program. And one of them was like, oh my, her eyes were so big. And she's like, no one's ever done this for me before. And probably not, because she was like 13. And like, what 13-year-old these days gets letters? So I think the care that you have to take to choose the right paper and the right pen and get a stamp and, you know, maybe go to the post office is like a very like thoughtful and caring way of communicating.
Mm-hmm.
And I wonder, like, did that feel different to you as a writer? Do you write letters?
I do.
Do you? Oh, wow.
So that's me. But yeah, I think like I always had pen pals. I had up, and then in my 20s, I had, I think, 2 friends who we were like pen pals for letters. And, you know, we don't do it now, but I really do enjoy. I love receiving mail and I love receiving letters. So I think the act of actually thinking I was writing to these girls and I never saw again, it was so much closer than because I had tried before to put it into kind of like a poem or prose thing, but something about writing it as this direct address to these girls just made it so much more real. So I think that there is like truly a power, especially in our day and age, like you were speaking to.
Right. And I think there's something about like, you know, I think you may remember like when I sent like the prompt, like requesting letters, like I wanted Black women to write from this space of vulnerability and love, because I think that's harder to do than we know. And I think especially older women or women, you know, talking to girls, or older women talking to younger women, I think we know that we don't get a lot of grace and we don't get a lot of second chances. And so I think a lot of times caretakers of girls are more punitive because they don't want them to mess up. But as a result, it can make, I think, you feel like you're wrong, or, you know, it can come off as not loving. But like, I wanted to see what would happen if we, you know, if you could open up and say, this is my experience. This is maybe why I would suggest you do things this way, because here's what I did, you know?
Yeah. And when you were talking about it, talking about like, you know, the older women or older generations disavow or discuss or like just confuse younger women, like do you have any idea like why I mean, you mentioned the punitive measure and just kind of wanting to this kind of unhelpful way, but what do you think it is around, especially sex? You said sexuality especially was something. So what do you think is kind of that fear that is there, or what's something that you noticed about that?
Well, I think it's like, it goes back to the Jezebel stereotype. I mean, how like so many Black women grow up hearing, don't be fast, don't be fast. Well, that girl, that's why that happened to her. She was fast. You know, don't dress like this. Don't, you know, older men give attention to young girls' bodies when they shouldn't, and the young girl is blamed, you know? So, I mean, people internalize that. You know, you can't grow up in a society that does that and not internalize it. And that makes it hard. You know, if you can't, like, if you're getting messages that you shouldn't love yourself, then how do you give love to people who look like you, who look and move like you? I mean, it's the same thing with, like, I've heard from girls that have said that, you know, the person who makes fun of my hair because it's nappy is my grandmother or my mother, or like they're the ones that want me to straighten my hair. And like, how does that, the one person who's supposed to think you're beautiful no matter what is the one that thinks you should change?
Yeah, and I think it's like that adage about, you know, loving our sons and raising our daughters, and action that's there, but when you're growing up, it doesn't feel like that at all. You know, it feels very judgmental and it's very confusing. But I think it does come from like you've been hurt, and so it's this overcorrection, as you were saying. And I think going along with that, because I do think sexuality is a power that I love the Sisters Are All Right so much. And one of the noticing was that about these stereotypes is that the kind of, I almost feel like these stereotypes exist to keep Black women from their power, from the power of sexuality, from the power of their anger, from the power of their nurturing and being a mother, right? And so when you are scared to inhabit that, you just don't, and then, you know, you become the thing that the society like wants you to be. So I want, this is Dear Black Girls, Letters for Stepping into Your Power. What does that look like? And what is your idea of power for Black women and Black girls?
I just feel like as you were saying that, I was thinking, what would it look like if we could wake up tomorrow and just step out in the world and not worry anything about our identity? Like what we look like was okay, what we sound like is okay, our skin is okay. We don't have to worry if anyone thinks we're aggressive or not. What if we could just be? And just, you brought up yoga, and, last year I did my 200-hour teacher training.
Awesome.
And there's that, at the end of a lot of classes, you'll hear that mantra, Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu, which is may all beings be happy, healthy, safe, and free. And every time I hear that, I'm like, yes, that's the thing. Like, that's the basic human thing that you want for everybody, and that I want for Black girls: happy, healthy, safe, and free. And, we can't always lay claim to any of those, much less all four at any one time,
Yeah, and it's like this, I think what happens is you could internalize it as if it's your fault, but really it is this aspect that everything that we do is contested in a way. And so if you had this like dreamscape or what it would look like what would it look like for you? You walk out the door, everything's been right in some way. All the things that Black women are writing in this book have, been able to really become like live reality. What would that look like for you, for Black women, Black girls?
Oh my gosh. I'm feeling bad because I can't imagine it. I don't know what it would feel like to move like that, because it's never been my experience. Like, that's a kind of freedom that I don't think I've ever had. It's, I think it's the idea of always feeling right, or at least, if you're not like right, but valid, always, and never having to second guess that.
Yeah, I think that's a testament, right, to just how it's tough to imagine that space.
That's some Octavia Butler level shit. It's like speculative fiction or something. Like, I don't know what that would be like, Yeah.
I think it's a practice, like as yoga is, right? I think books like this are like part of that practice of imagining what does it feel like to be feeding ourselves and each other. And you were talking in the beginning again, and the preface especially, about the challenges that Black girls are facing now that they didn't. So I want to hear more about, like, what are some like differences that you're seeing, and what are some commonalities that's like, oh, okay, this is still a problem. But yeah, what were some generational differences that you noticed?
So it's a lot of this still comes back to those like core stereotypes, but they're just evolving over time. One of the ones that I heard a lot was like around sexuality, that, for a long time, I think I'm a Gen Xer, and I think maybe Gen Xers, older millennials and older, just grew up with the message, you just don't do it. Just, don't be a hoe, don't do it. Like, that was the message that we got. But now there's, certainly in pop culture, there's a lot more sexuality. There's a lot more blatant sexuality. And, a lot of girls talked about like this imperative, like, to be sexy. So you look at social media and everyone's kind of like looking back at it and lips parted. And so they're like, there's this imperative to be sexy, but still not to have too much sex. Like, to talk about your prowess, like you have to show off your prowess, but can't look like you're too good, and your body can't be too hot. Like it seems like instead of making girls freer, it's like even harder to stay on the right side of the, okay, like the, okay, it's like a thin line, and that's got to be hard. You know, it was hard to be told just don't do it, but to be told do it, but don't do it too much, like like is even harder. Although a lot of girls that I've spoken to do feel more comfortable exploring their sexual identity, which is something that I didn't, you know, I don't think was the case for women 20, 30 years ago. So that's great. It's like we're progress. It's like we move forward. And then there are same, like in, I'm actually writing the second edition of Sisters Are All Right, which will come out in the fall, second expanded edition. And I said that racism and sexism were kind of like water. They kind of find the cracks in things and you don't notice it until things start to crumble and mold. And that's kind of how it is. Like they keep changing and bending, but they're still always there.
Yeah, like they've become, so they're becoming, as we like evolve, become sophisticated.
Sophisticated too. Yeah.
Sophisticated and a little harder to put out. And that's something definitely that I saw was that like I'm on one hand like really happy that young girls have more room, especially around sexual identity and queerness, to really like own that. But then there does seem to be like, I'm like, wow, like I would be really amiss in this generation. Like I don't know how to twerk like that. Like I, you know,
I don't even have a butt. I would be like, I just out of luck.
These girls are doing this. On one hand, at least when I would watch a music video and feel bad about myself, at least I knew like, oh, this is Beyonce. This is Rihanna. This is like Mariah Carey. Now, like you're the girl who goes to your school, you know, and I don't know how that is to manage that, that difference.
And the fact that a lot of it is still for the male gaze. Like it's still about the male gaze, you know, after all, you know, after all of this time.
Yeah, and it's like how to move that we become our own mirrors.
Right. Because, you know, we talk about sexiness, but don't talk about like consent and how to know what you like, you know, you don't really talk about pleasure. And, you know, there are a lot of issues beyond just like what's titillating, and the conversation hasn't moved toward that, I think.
No, it has not. But I think that I see it in some spaces, but not in this, like, it's not what's rewarded or celebrated. Like when we talk about consent, it's always in a sometimes like someone got in trouble, you know? They've asked like knowing what you want and owning your body. So that is a way in which I think young girls are definitely navigating that a lot, very, very differently from previous generations. So much. So another, I guess like again, speaking about how this book goes back and forth in time, because it's what I would notice in a lot of the letters was a lot of Black women were just like, I wish someone had told me this, you know, that seemed to be kind of the common refrain. Like, I wish someone had told me X.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering too, with how do you feel that the letters both speak to inner Black girl and Black women and Black girls differently? Like, what are you seeing with that?
I think they get like, I think they're giving us the same message, but you know, girls and women will take away from the letters different things based on their identities and their experiences. Like there's a letter that's actually the first letter I received when I did that call through social media that I think I'm going to read, that was just so beautiful. And it's written obviously to a girl, but every woman who's like, I read it and cried, but I'm gonna keep myself together tonight. Because of the expression of love and sisterhood. There's probably another girl who will read about this woman, her name's Nicole Jackson, read about her experience in childhood and relate to that. I didn't relate to that, but I, related to other parts. So I think I think the message is the same, but what you're going to take from it is going to depend on who you are in the space that you live in. And so I just wanted to share it starts out, "Good evening, darling." This is the first letter I received. And so you'll know why I felt like I had to write this book. "I write this letter from a hotel room in Houston, Texas, a long way away from my small apartment on Halsted Street in East Orange, New Jersey. I don't think, even as a child, I imagined a world bigger than that town full of hopeful hopelessness. I couldn't see past the concrete or crack needles that line the path to where I now find myself today. But here I am, writing to you, my darling. I'm writing you, wishing you well in a time that may seem to be anything other to little girls that look like you, that look like us. I write you without knowing your story or your path, so perhaps I should share my own. I was the young flower that bloomed from the broken glass and concrete of the hood, the daughter of the genius welder and engineer turned crack addict. He died before I could appreciate his brilliance. I am the child of two parents infected with HIV before there were medications to treat it. One died, the other is still here, although forever changed. The daughter of a valedictorian and a woman in STEM who was accepted into every Ivy League she applied to. However, the isolation of being educated in a predominantly white school took its toll, and she left too soon. My mother studied biomedical engineering. I am now the vice president of strategy leading engineers in healthcare technology, and I am owning my space to ensure your experience won't be the same. Life is complicated and nonlinear. Learn that now. There are many paths to the same destination, so if you should find that plan A fails, remember to fall back on the rest of the alphabet. I was a high school dropout, but plan to soon begin my doctorate in learning technologies. Sometimes it's hard to catch my breath and take this journey in, because there was a time when I thought that the only people who held doctor as a title were physicians. But in a few years, I'll be one. I am now one of 125 women chosen by the largest scientific organization in the United States to nationally represent women in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And in a few short months, a life-size statue of myself and 119 other incredible women will be on display, and I will be thinking of you during its unveiling. When you are low and feeling down and your body and energy are weary, remember these words. Pull from me all the positive energy I hold for you here in my heart as I type these words. Remember that within those veins, you carry the legacy of a dozen generations waiting for you to arrive to your own occasion. Do not fear your own brilliance and beauty. Do not hide it or dim your light because others complain of the glare. If you feel like you are bigger than something, that's because you are. I wish I would have written you from the beaches of St. Lucia or the waters of Loch Ness in Scotland. I wish I could have taken notes during my commute to work in Silicon Valley or during lunch breaks while looking out on the bay in San Francisco. I wish you could walk with me through the buildings of Houston Community College as I work with the brilliant minds of the most diverse city in the nation to tackle the issue of flooding and climate change with technology. We should have been pen pals a long time ago. I'm sure there would have been much to discuss. But know that you were there with me. Know that you are here with me. Know that you will be there for every keynote address at every given tech conference. You will be there for every new concept or application I create, for every new breakthrough, every algorithm, every data model created. You will be on my mind as I research while pursuing my doctorate to understand how you think and learn so someday someone can teach your children better than others have taught you. Know that you are not alone. You are not invisible. I see you. You are capable. You are powerful. You are worthy. You are a part of a larger community, and with us, you are home. As Black women, we are not the exception. We are the norm. And I will wait for you. We will wait for you. I will build an infrastructure for you and keep the path lit on your journey so you'll never have to worry about finding your way again. In moments when life seems most uncertain and you are most afraid of your future, think of the caterpillar who did not know that when it saw a butterfly flying above, it too would soon become one. You are a part of something bigger. So accept the uneasiness in your gut when you desire more and trust it, and then rise to your own occasion, and you will be met with equal company. Nicole.
Oh,
I was like, oh. I was like, I need that, you know?
we just hearing that, like,
Yeah.
it's so powerful and yet so tender.
Yes.
I think
Yes.
that again, that comes through this text again and again. Is like there's like such a softness and a tenderness, and that's something that I'm just so incredibly thankful for, because I don't think Black women and Black girls get that enough. We get a lot of rah-rah sometimes,
yes.
but treating each other with tenderness is so important.
Yeah.
That was just such a, like, I could feel that there.
Yeah,
like,
you can feel her love, you know, for us,
mm-hmm.
you know.
And like what she overcame and what she owned. I mean, it's just really beautiful. So something that often happens, you know, when you pointedly say like, "Dear Black girls," have you ever met the question from people about like, well, is this just for Black girls or is this for other girls too? Response to that.
So I, in all of my work, center Black women and Black girls because we don't get centered enough. There are so few places where we are centered. We all know, you know, when we talk about Blackness, everyone wants to talk about men and boys. When we talk about women, white women are centered. And I wanted a place where Black femmes could be centered. But, you know, there are things that are part of the human experience. There are things that are part of the experience of being woman or girl that we share. And so I think, you know, I think many people can enjoy this book. It is for Black women and girls, but I think, you know, in the same way that many books that are in the canon, you know, the literary canon, that were not written for us, and yet we read and we love and we pull things from, you know, I hope this book can be like that.
Exactly. And I think it speaks about, you know, we are not the exception, we are the norm.
Right.
And there's a way in which Black women are positioned as if we were just like aberration to humanity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being. So you could read something and get something out of it. But I think that's such a beautiful answer, because I do feel that. Yes, it's obviously written to Black women, but there is that universal, I am coming back, I am lighting the way, I am building this thing. Right. That is just like that's I think why people have children, at least I guess one of the good reasons, right, is to be that guide. So I really so much. So I guess like one last question before we turn it to the audience, and that is, what was the thing that most surprised you about writing or putting together this anthology, and also having it be in the world? I know it's newly in the world, but
I just, you know, from the very beginning, like I was just surprised at how Black women showed up. Not that I don't believe in us, because, you know, we can turn it out. But, you know, like I said before, writing letters takes time. Sending in letters takes time. Like women actually, like to mail an international package full of journals takes time, and women did that. I mean, it wasn't just something they did because, oh, I guess I'll do it. Like women actively were like, is it too late? Is it too late? You know, I shared this in a group I'm in. Like it was I think it was active love for Black girls. And I guess it's not that it surprised me. It just made me feel really good.
That's
yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I feel that. Feel just like the overpouring yet again. It's just like, I think it's just that there's so much love here.
Yes.
kind of turn it back and we get some more love. I guess we can see what questions we have from the audience. I already see one popping up, so let me. So I have one question. It says, was there a letter that surprised you the most or made you feel something unexpected?
Not necessarily surprised me, but I proactively tried to bring in a diversity of letters that did not necessarily represent my experience. I felt like one miss in The Sisters Are All Right is that all of the women I interviewed either had class privilege or educational privilege. And that makes all the difference in what we know that makes all the difference in what your experiences are going to be. And I didn't want to make that mistake. And I also, in the first edition, didn't have the voices of trans women, and I didn't want to make that mistake again. So I tried to be really intentional on getting a diversity of voices because I wanted Black girls to see themselves in all the ways they show up in the world. So some of the letters weren't necessarily surprising, but just gave me another window to other Black women and their experiences, which I thought was really great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's another thing that's like so beautiful is just to see the representation of Black womanhood that was in the book, like queer Black womanhood, Black womanhood across socioeconomic levels, people talking about colorism on both sides. Like, I think that's
biracial women, women with dark brown skin. Like, yeah, I wanted that.
Very important because we do get like a single story of Black womanhood a lot of times. So the next question comes from Nora, and she asks, are there any letters that you didn't include and why?
Most of the letters that I didn't include, it really came down to space. And a lot of the letters that I first got were very general in advice and inspiration. So they were wonderful. And I'll certainly send them. I'll give them to a girl. But, I didn't want that to be the bulk of the book. I wanted the book to focus on, specific issues. And one thing I felt like really strongly about is that, I wanted this to be feminist and progressive and racist and anti-respectability politics. I wanted to honor, the LGBTQ community, like all of those things that I think sometimes are missing in letters, or not just letters, but books to teenage girls. And so there were some letters where it's like, this, there's a line in here that I'm like, no, because I don't want any girl to pick up this book and feel bad because of some, one of the things I told women is do not make assumptions. Do not make assumptions about class, sexuality, religion. I don't want a girl to pick this up and then feel ashamed in some way.
And that also really came through. And I love that anti-respectability.
Mm-hmm.
I love that line because I just think that's another barrier to being honest between ourselves and sometimes even to ourselves is that
yes.
we police like that little your worst auntie on your shoulder.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, I think having that as like a key feature definitely shone through. Our next question comes from Melody, and it says, a question for both of us actually is, what was one of your favorite movies and books growing up as Black girls?
Ooh. So it's funny, we were just having this discussion on Twitter and Facebook, and I don't know if it's just like women who grew up in the 80s, but we were talking about how the stuff that I read as a young girl was wildly inappropriate. We all agreed that we read, the Judy Blume, the stuff that all kids our age read, but we were like, oh my God, all the V.C. Andrews and the Harold Robbins and the Judith Krantz and all of those things, that like half the stuff they were doing in there, I was like, I don't even know what that means. But those were my favorite books. I don't know, maybe someone's saying yes. So you too were a bookish child who was reading stuff you had no business reading. So those were the books. And then of course, you know, I think like every Gen X teenager, all those, you know, Breakfast Club and, you know, all those 16 Candles, all that, like, that's my era.
That's awesome. Yes, I feel like there's a weird, like, I feel like I'm in love with like Gen X cultural touch. All those things, even though I'm like a millennial, are very, very familiar. I also read Judith Krantz, should not have been reading it, and still have key scenes that like life in some way. And I'm like, I read this when I was very young, so this is cool.
After we had that discussion, I kind of wanted to go find out on YouTube, to go look at YouTube and see if like any of the mini series they made out of those books, which one is I know someone in the audience, which is the book where they did like the mini series. I think it had Phoebe Cates in it. And like the big line was like, which one of you bitches is my mother? It was like a bunch of women that like went to this like Swiss boarding school. Lace. Yes, that was it.
Oh my, I loved it.
One of them had a baby and put it up for adoption, but we didn't know which one of them it was. And the daughter, she comes back. It was so good.
I on my list. I like Dazzle. Dazzle is my favorite, about the photographer in California juggling 3 men at a time. I just like was really into that as a.
I love that.
But I guess like, let's see, as a Black girl, I really love The Great Muppet Caper. Just really into it. I think this fits to like who I am as a person, but I was like really in love with that movie. And in books, I read a lot of I loved Anne of Green Gables, and I loved the American Girl series primarily. Yeah. And Samantha, because she had the best clothes. So those were all things that like I remember being very influential. And I used to also, I was very nerdy. I liked the Book of Virtue. It was just like all these stories about being like a virtuous person. That was really So next question comes, it says, do you think you will continue relationships with any of the letter writers who you met through the book?
I think I definitely will. I think, you know, the women, most of the women I interviewed for the Sisters Are All Right. Like, I still know them. I'm still connected to them on social media. I still, you know, talk to them, and, you know, we text each other and chat back and forth. And I think I've made some wonderful relationships like Hannah. I didn't know you before the book, that like amazing women that I'm so excited to now have in my circle.
I think there's just a community that's there. Mm-hmm. Or that this can continue to just like grow and grow and grow. And I'm so happy. I met you at AWP, but I think I was like fangirling, and AWP is like a cluster. So
oh my God. I know.
Look,
I feel like you know what? You just made me think I should have like a Dear Black Girl like reunion, like Zoom, and invite all of the women who contribute. Well, I'm going to do that. Thank you, whoever asked that question. I'm going to totally do that.
Mm-hmm. So next question says, do you have a sense of what your next project might be?
Ooh, well, like I have a couple of ideas that I'm batting around. One is I feel like Dear Black Girl is like a connection to the Sisters Are All Right. You know, so you kind of have now the young girl, young woman, you have kind of middle 30s, 40s, 50s woman. It would be interesting to see how these stereotypes in Black women's experiences happen over 50. So I've thought of that. And I've also thought about like wanting to investigate the idea of Black love, which is something you don't hear about often, and not just romantic love, but all the ways we love, like, you know, familial, community love, you know, our deep friendships that are formed, like, you know, telling some of those stories from the Black community, because so much of our our humanity is taken away because people don't think we have human feelings like love. And we hear a lot about violence in the Black community, when I think those of us in the Black community know that there's more love than anything else.
Yeah. I think both those projects would be amazing to see and give us there are these silences in our canon that we are just stepping into, and I just think it's so amazing to see these places get filled in with people like you. And so I don't see any further questions. I didn't know.
I should have thrown in the other thing is this fall, second expanded edition of Sisters Are All Right is coming out. So with additional, I've updated some of the things, and there's an additional chapter on power that looks at great stuff that happened in Georgia, and the amazing things that women are doing in politics, and working for the community and leading Black Lives Matter, and how still in the midst of all of that, stereotypes are still at play. And I'm hoping Charis will let me come and be in person or something in the fall when that book comes out. But hey, you have a book.
I know, and I actually just got from Josh. Thank you. About projects that I'm working on. And so right now I just finished my book, Honey is a Knife, and the wonderful Tamara will be actually blurbing for me, so I'm very excited about that. But it's a book, an eclectic essay collection about owning all that you are and speaking to, again, envisioning a new world. It really is centered in pleasure. But I talk about everything from having a mother wound to what about racism was just like a dad from a Lifetime movie, to having a body image crisis during a Bikram yoga session. So it runs the gamut of Black girl healing, but it really is about owning all that you are, from tragic to magic. Because I think that Black girl magic is amazing, but I think we also have to have compassion for all that we are. And so that's the book, Honey is a Knife.
Tell me about the term Honey is a Knife.
So about, I can't remember, it's 5 years ago, I got a scholarship to go to Nigeria. First time going, it's my ancestry country, and it was to go to the Oshun festival. And Oshun is a Yoruba feminine deity associated with fertility, love, healing, the cooling waters, and there are many beautiful stories about her mythology, about her, how her power comes from her sweetness. And so I was reading this research book, and there was an artist, a Black American artist by the name of Charles Abramson, talked about how with Oshun, he said with Oshun, you realize that honey is the knife. And it just stuck. How oftentimes when we look at activism, we see it as because there's violence, right? So we feel like we have to combat it with a certain type of violence, a certain kind of energy. But that actually what can be even more healing and more give us the impetus to fight and to keep going is honey. And so for me, honey is a pleasure, and it's a pleasure of owning all that you are. But it's also very much not using your sexuality weapon, though people can do that. But you really, there's so many stories about Oshun just kind of doing the paradoxical thing. You expect her to do this, everyone else is doing this one thing. Oshun does this, and it always works. So that just really came to me, since she's such an ancient deity, I think that that's the power of Black women. People want to do these things. And it's well, if you just were to listen to Black women, and hopefully do things, AKA, voting for Trump, maybe we'd be in a better spot, right? So Oshun is all about using her sweetness to get what she wants in an honorable way, but also in a way that's just as it's about giving pleasure, but also giving pleasure to herself. So,
oh my gosh, I love that phrase. I love that. So while you're rocking your yellow, you're vibing on your Oshun energy.
Yeah.
It looks like Ebony asked, what are you doing? She's asking us, what am I doing? What are you doing to celebrate yourself? Well, in the short term, right before we started, I ordered from DoorDash from this cookie place that's in the neighborhood. Oh my gosh, Indianapolis folks, it's called Crumble Cookie, and I am going to celebrate myself as soon as this is over with the cookie. But in the healthier way, it's been like a really rough month in trying to like get Dear Black Girl out, get the manuscript for The Sisters Are All Right out, and the day job that pays the bills. And the real treat for me will be like moving back into my space of taking care of myself. And like I had picked up all of these rituals and things over the last year through my yoga class. So making sure I meditated every morning, and I'd get up and I'd light my incense or a candle and I'd meditate, and then I'd sit down to work, and I was more thoughtful about the ways I was going through my days. Not so in the last month or so. So my celebration will be returning to that.
That's awesome. And I think it's life, right?
Yeah.
Of it. But I want us, more importantly, what kind of cookie did you?
Oh my gosh, they have these chilled iced cookies that have this, they're like sugar cookies. They make them hot, they ice them. It's just so good. Oh my gosh. It is probably 9 million calories, but we aren't going to think about that tonight.
Pleasure. That's awesome. Celebrating. I think for me, what am I doing that's actually healthy? Sometimes I celebrate myself by buying things. I need to kind of stop doing that, especially clothes. But I think it's like relaxing. For me, it's like going for a walk. I'm probably gonna like lay down in bed and watch Killing Eve, which maybe doesn't sound like celebrating to some people. Very much celebrate. I also almost every night I write down like my gratitudes for the day. So
I like that.
And that's definitely an aspect of not only celebrating me, but celebrating the beauty that's all around me.
I feel like that's a thing. I don't know whether anyone explicitly said that in the book, but I think that's a thing that I'd love to impart to younger women and girls, like this idea of self-care. And we say that all the time, but we don't do it. But like incorporating that self-care as a habit, as a ritual, so that it's part of your life and you don't have to grasp for time for it. And then it's actually part of your life. I think that's really important. And we need to start teaching girls that.
For sure. The practicality of it.
Speaking of that, do we have any more questions?
I don't think we have any more questions now.
I was going to share, I thought it might be great if we closed with the epilogue from the book, which I called, it was like a perfect segue because it's called Pick Up Your Oyster Knife. And if anyone knows Zora Neale Hurston, then you know the context of that. I love you, Black girl. I love Black girls in Afro puffs and Black girls in bundles of Remy. I love the daddy's girls and the fatherless ones. I love the little girls who make straight A's and the ones who skip school. I love the hood girls and the suburban girls and the country girls too. I love the quiet girls and the loud girls, the lip-smacking, smart-talking ones. I love the saved girls and the heathen ones. I love the girls who stay in sweatshirts and J's and the ones in the tight Fashion Nova fits. I love the happy girls and the anxious girls and the girls battling depression. I love the trans girls living defiantly. I love the girls in the library and the ones on the basketball court. I love the virgins and the young mamas. I love the girly girls and the butch girls. I love the girls who fight. I love the girls who love boys and the girls who love girls and the girls who love both or neither. I love you, Black girl, unconditionally, and whether you are 15 or 50. You hear me? Today, I love you whether you look or act like they say you should. You are not wrong. And when you are wrong, I love you with all your flaws. no matter what choices and mistakes you have made, no matter where you live, no matter what you look like, no matter what thing has happened to you. And the greatest thing you can learn is to love yourself unconditionally too. Maybe the hardest thing you have to learn. And I hope the letters in this book have shown you how. One other thing, Black girl, you must learn to love other Black women and girls the same way. Love us whether we look or act like they say we should. We are not wrong, and when we are wrong, love us with all our flaws. No matter what choices and mistakes we have made, no matter where we live, no matter what we look like, no matter what thing has happened to us. This does not mean you have to become a target for another Black girl's pain or anger or trauma. It doesn't mean you have to silence yourself in the face of Black women. It means you must give your sisters grace and understanding, the benefit of the doubt. So few people give us that. We owe it to each other. We have to acknowledge each other's humanity, even, maybe especially when we are walking away. I hope the letters in this book have shown you how to do that too. Because we are sisters, Black girl. We have to take care of ourselves and each other. You are me, and I am you, and we are all right. Inside each of us are tiny pieces of our foremothers. Sarah Boone's ingenuity, Danya Luna's unforgettable beauty, Toni Morrison's incomparable wisdom, Mamie Till's fierce love, Aretha Franklin's creativity, Marsha P. Johnson's fearlessness, Harriet Tubman's will to survive, Katherine Johnson's genius, Michelle Obama's grace. Black girls are made of all that magic, birthed in the African sun, baptized by the Middle Passage, and burnished by America. That is a power that no one else can claim, just us. We are sisters. You are me. I am you. And we will get free together. Zora Neale Hurston, a great Black woman writer, once said, "I do not weep at the world. I am too busy sharpening my oyster knife." An oyster knife is a utensil used to crack open the shell of an oyster to get the tasty meat inside. Zora meant that she wasn't wasting time thinking about the hard parts of being Black and a woman. And she didn't care what other people said about her. She was busy trying to get at all the good stuff life had to offer. Celebrate your Black girl life. Celebrate us. Be like Zora. Get that oyster girl.
Yay.
Celebrate, celebrate.
I love that.
Well, thank you for this gift. I know that it's going to be something that people are going to return to again and again, and that they're going to want to give as a gift to all of the Black girls and women in their life, and to themselves. So I trust that, the folks who are here watching from home have already felt the warmth of this offering, and that it will continue to sort of flow out, because all of
Oh, sorry.
yes.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
I just had one more thing that I forgot to say, which is that on my website, TamaraWinfreyHarris.com, is a free reader experience kit that you can download. So if you want to have intergenerational conversations, there are some additional questions that go with the book. There are some hints written with a psychologist and an educator on how to have good intergenerational conversations. And there's some really cute paper dolls that I'm too old to play with, but I made them anyway. And there is a really dope playlist. So
love it. Thank you. So I just dropped that in the chat. So TamaraWinfreyHarris.com. Everybody go check that out. I want to make sure folks know you can buy Dear Black Girl from Charis via this teal link right at the bottom of your screen. You also can buy Tammy's first book from us. Soon, hopefully, we will be able to get Hannah's book as well. It's coming down the pike. I've seen the cover. It's a beautiful cover. So it is in the works, and we look forward to being able to sell it. And the last thing it's my job to do is to remind folks that we are primarily individually donor supported. So folks like you make our work possible, and make these conversations possible. We know everybody's money is different right now. So $1, $3, no dollars, whatever is right for you tonight. It all helps us in our work, but mostly we're just really glad that you were here with us in this space. It means a lot. We always want to celebrate books that celebrate our community. So thank you so much. I'll be adding captions to this event and putting it up on YouTube, hopefully within the next 24 hours or so. So if you know anybody missed this that really wanted to be here tonight, please let them know and keep an eye out on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and we'll be sharing the link. So I hope you all stay safe and well, and that this book continues to be a gift to everyone who encounters it.
Thank you, everyone.
Being here. Thank you.
Have a good night.
Bye.